Hi, my name is Cindy Bernstein, and I first went on Encounter as a participant in April 2009. I first learned of Encounter 2 years ago while living in Jerusalem for a few months before returning to New York to start a master's program in international affairs at the Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. As I read over my course descriptions, I was seized with fear. It was inevitable that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict would come up in class. What would I answer to my classmates when they asked if I had ever met a Palestinian, if I had ever spent time in the West Bank? The answer to both questions was no. I would lose all credibility. Meanwhile, something was abuzz in Katzavon, and a friend of mine told me about a program called Encounter that takes young American Jewish leaders into the West Bank to meet with Palestinians. My first thought was, that is way too radical for me. How could I tell my family? My family, they're all architects and engineers, so they are literally building the yeshuvim, the Jewish establishments or settlements in the West Bank. What if my cousin, stationed at the checkpoint to Bethlehem, saw me entering or leaving? What would the teachers from my Orthodox yeshiva seminary, where I had spent 2 years learning after high school, say? Would this be a betrayal of all the people who I loved and respected the most? But I decided to see for myself why so many people in my community, people as unlikely as myself to go and to meet with Palestinians, were calling the experience absolutely mind-blowing. In a way, I was going to spy, to report back on the program's agenda. A few weeks later, I was on a bus, entering into a very intimidating and unknown territory that somehow was only 10 minutes away from Jerusalem, a city I had called my home for years. 2 days after that, I found my life absolutely changed. Upon returning to SIPA, to my school, Encounter became my gold card. In conversations on the conflict, I automatically gained respect when I mentioned that I had been a part of a program working to bring about reconciliation, to bridge the divides between Jews and Palestinians. As a result of Encounter, I decided to focus my studies on human rights and conflict resolution. I sought out opportunities to continue my education in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the Middle East region. I traveled to Turkey, to Jordan, and to Syria to engage in reconciliation work. I also assumed the position of the head of the Human Rights Department at SIPA, my school, with the goal to transform the dialogue there as well. Last March, I had the opportunity to serve as the teaching assistant for a class at Columbia University School of Journalism that would be traveling to the region. One day, a Palestinian student of mine approached me to speak about the conflict. She was specifically curious to know whether any Jews or Israelis had committed themselves to reconciliation. I immediately told her about Encounter and took her to the office in Jerusalem. We met with members of the Jerusalem staff, some of whom are here tonight, for over an hour. As we walked out of the office, I saw that Mariam was crying. She looked up at me and said, "You know, Cindy, before coming on this trip, I thought there was no way there could ever be peace. But after meeting these people, after seeing Encounter, I am confident that now there can be." Encounter has brought me back my voice, the motivation to participate in hard conversations and work together with Palestinians and others with diverse political perspectives to build bridges between our ideas. My Encounter experiences, in fact, have encouraged me to dedicate myself to transform the very discourse that surrounds the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Last summer, I joined the planning committee of the Wexner Summer Institute, a prestigious gathering of young Jewish leaders. Not only were my fellow planners also Encounter alumni, committed to creating a structure of supportive, of open dialogue about Israel, and a commitment to respectfully tackle the thorniest issues, but Greg Khalil, a past legal advisor at PLO Negotiation Support Unit and past Encounter speaker, I believe he's somewhere here tonight, even joined us as a presenter. This would have been inconceivable before Encounter. The community's embrace of Greg, as well as the content and the tone of the discussions throughout the Institute, demonstrated the extent to which Encounter has begun to reach tipping point in transforming the mainstream Jewish community. Melissa and Encounter, thank you for teaching me that being a modern Orthodox, religious Zionist, and peace builder are not mutually exclusive. For showing me and so many other Jewish leaders a new path. On Yom HaAtzmaut, I especially want to thank you for empowering me to be a leader in building a future for the land that I love, and motivating me to be part of the solution, to engage in the conversations, to tackle the hard questions, and to build bridges, both in the Middle East and in New York. I now have the honor of introducing a personal hero. I met Sami Awad, the Executive Director of Holy Land Trust, on my very first Encounter trip. Sami is known to many as the Palestinian Gandhi, training thousands of leaders in the Palestinian community in nonviolence activism. This past March, I had the opportunity to meet him again when, because of my experience on Encounter, I brought the Columbia University class I teach to hear from him in his office in Bethlehem. Ladies and gentlemen, Sami Awad.